This happened a few years ago, and honestly, it still messes with me whenever I think about it. I live with my family in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people barely lock their doors, and everyone knows everyone. We've got a 3-story house, and there's usually someone awake late. My uncle, my mom, me. It's never totally dark, never totally quiet. One night, around 3 in the morning, my uncle went outside to take out the trash. When he came back in, he looked pale, like he'd just seen something. He told us he got this weird feeling, like someone was watching him from the dark. He said he looked toward my mom's SUV, the one parked in the driveway, and thought he saw someone sitting inside. The windows are tinted, so he couldn't make out a face, just a shape. He stood there for a few seconds, trying to get a better look, but the longer he stared, the heavier that feeling got. He just tossed the trash in the bin and hurried back inside. For the next few days, he couldn't stop talking about it. Then, my mom started noticing small things in her car. Stuff is out of place. A few items are missing. One morning, she even found an open beer bottle in the cup holder. Nobody in our house drinks beer. That's when she started locking her doors every night. My room's on the top floor, the one facing the street. A few nights after that, I started hearing something strange. Footsteps on the front steps. Our stairs are made of cement, and a few slabs are loose. They make this really distinct clinking sound when you step on them, and I'd hear that sound every few nights. At first, I thought it was my uncle coming home, but it kept happening on nights when everyone was already home. The footsteps were slow, careful, like whoever it was didn't want to be heard. I started staying up, just listening. Once or twice, I could have sworn I heard faint breathing near the front door. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to sleep in my grandma's room downstairs. She's got this small monitor that shows the security camera feed from the driveway. It was around 2 in the morning. I remember glancing at the screen and freezing. There was a man, standing at the very edge of the camera's view, tall, completely still, facing the house. He wasn't moving. He wasn't walking. He was just standing there. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, waiting for him to do something. Then I grabbed my phone and texted everyone in our family group chat, asking if anyone had just gotten home. Everyone said no. When I looked back at the screen, he was gone. About a month later, something happened that made everything before feel like nothing. It was a weekday afternoon. Everyone was at work or school, and I was home alone because I wasn't feeling well. Around 2 o'clock, I heard a sound outside. A small engine, kind of like a golf cart. When I looked out the window, there was a man in a blue shirt standing next to one in our driveway. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, facing the house. I called my mom, but she didn't pick up, so I called my stepdad. As soon as I told him what was happening, his tone changed. He told me to stay upstairs, keep watching, and call 911 if the guy came closer. A few minutes later, my mom called back. When I told her, she didn't even hesitate. She said, "Call the police, right now." So I did. The dispatcher told me to hide somewhere safe. That's when I realized something. I wasn't sure if we'd locked the back door that morning. I went downstairs as quietly as I could. The front door was locked, but when I reached the kitchen and saw the back door, my stomach dropped. It was wide open. I slammed it shut and turned the lock, and just as I did, the doorknob started to shake, hard. Someone was on the other side, trying to get in. I looked through the glass for half a second and saw him. A tall, skinny man. No shirt. His skin looked wrong, like it was stretched too tight, trembling with rage or something. He yanked the handle a few more times, then stopped. Just stood there, breathing heavy. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my parents' room while the dispatcher stayed on the line. The police got there in minutes. I heard the sirens, then pounding on the front door. When they searched the house, there was no one. Not in the yard, not in the street. They checked the cameras again. The guy in the blue shirt, the one with the golf cart, was standing just barely within frame, far enough that you couldn't see his face. And the one in the backyard, just faint movement, like he knew exactly where the camera couldn't see him. No one was ever caught. I moved out a few years later, but every time I visit that neighborhood, I think about it. A few weeks ago, I was driving through to see an old friend. When I turned down my old street, I heard something, that low, buzzing hum of a golf cart. I looked in my mirror and saw one coming up the road behind me. I didn't stick around to see who was driving. This happened in 2019, when I was renting a small 2-bedroom house in a quiet suburban area with my friend, Nate. It wasn't in a bad neighborhood. Pretty normal, actually. Mostly older families, nice lawns, and the occasional barking dog at night. We'd just graduated from college and were renting the place while we looked for full-time jobs. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe. At least for a while. The house had a big front window that faced the street. It had these long, thin blinds that rattled if you touched them, and the way the streetlight shone through at night gave the living room this faint, orange glow. Most nights, I'd stay up late on my laptop in that room. Lights off, just the glow from my screen and that weird amber light coming through the blinds. One night, around 1:30 a.m., I heard something outside. It wasn't loud, more like a quiet shuffle on the front porch. I muted my video and listened. There it was again. Soft steps, then silence. I figured it was the wind, or maybe the neighbor's cat. But curiosity got the better of me. I stood up, walked to the blinds, and peeked through a tiny gap. And that's when I saw him. A man was standing on the sidewalk across the street, directly facing our house. He wasn't moving, just standing there, hands in his pockets, staring straight at the window. I froze. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. After a minute or two, he turned and slowly walked down the street until he disappeared behind a row of trees. I told Nate about it in the morning, but we laughed it off. Probably some drunk guy from the next neighborhood over. But the next night, around the same time, I saw him again. Same spot, same posture, same stillness. Only this time, he was a little closer. For the next few nights, it became a pattern. Every time after 1 a.m., I'd catch him somewhere out front, sometimes across the street, sometimes a few steps closer to our driveway. Never moving fast, never talking, just watching. I tried recording it once on my phone, but the footage barely showed anything. The streetlight wasn't bright enough, and all you could make out was this tall, shadowy figure just standing there. It started to mess with me. I stopped staying up late in the living room and started sleeping with my bedroom curtains closed tight. But one night, something changed. It was a Friday. Nate was at his girlfriend's place, so I was home alone. Around midnight, I heard the faint crunch of gravel outside, like someone was walking on the side of the house. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the living room. The blinds were closed, but that orange light still leaked through the cracks. Then, without warning, there was this soft knock on the window. Not loud, just 3 slow taps on the glass. My heart dropped. I backed away immediately and went straight to my room, locked the door, and called Nate. He didn't pick up. I ended up staying in my room all night, wide awake, with my phone flashlight pointed at the door. When Nate came home the next morning, I told him everything. We checked outside together, and there, right below the living room window, were clear footprints in the dirt, and they were facing the glass. That same day, we decided to buy a couple of cheap security cameras, the kind you can check from your phone. We set one on the porch facing the front yard and another one at the back door. For a few nights, nothing happened. No knocks, no footsteps, no sign of the man. Then, around 2 a.m., on a Wednesday, my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected. Front porch. I opened the app, expecting maybe a raccoon or a passing car, but there he was, the same man, standing inches away from the front door. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing dark clothes and what looked like a baseball cap. He wasn't doing anything, just leaning slightly toward the camera, like he was trying to look inside. After about 30 seconds, he turned and walked out of frame. I called the police immediately. They came within 10 minutes, looked around, but by then he was gone. They said it was probably a trespasser or someone casing houses, and told us to keep our doors locked and the lights on. That night, we barely slept. For a few days, everything was quiet again, but that weekend, something happened that I still can't explain. It was around 3 a.m. when Nate burst into my room, out of breath, saying, "Check the backyard camera, right now." I grabbed my phone, opened the app, and froze. The feed from the backyard camera was black. Then, slowly, a hand appeared in front of the lens. Not like it was passing by. It was covering it. You could see the faint outline of fingers pressing against the glass. A second later, the feed cut out completely. We heard a noise outside. A quick thud near the back door. We didn't even check. We locked ourselves in the bathroom with a baseball bat and waited until the sun came up. When we finally went out the next morning, the camera was gone. The whole thing had been ripped off the wall, and in the dirt below the window, we found more footprints. They led from the back fence all the way to the porch, then stopped, right in front of the living room window. We sent the footage we did have to the police. They told us it wasn't clear enough to identify the guy, but they'd patrol the area more often. Still, after that, I couldn't relax. Every noise, every creak in the floor made me jump. About a week later, Nate decided to spend the night at his girlfriend's again. I told him I'd be fine, though deep down, I really wasn't. I went to bed early, made sure every door and window was locked, and left a light on in the hallway. Sometime after 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound that made my blood run cold. The living room blinds were rattling. It was quiet, just a soft shake every few seconds, like someone brushing their hand against them. I got out of bed and crept toward the sound. When I peeked around the corner, I saw the silhouette of a man standing inside the window. He wasn't in the house. He was pressed right up against the glass, his hands flat on it, staring in. For a second, I couldn't move. Then, without thinking, I flicked the light switch. He was gone. No running, no footsteps, just gone. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, the police came again. They checked the outside of the window and found a clear handprint on the glass. Long fingers, slightly smudged, like whoever it was had been standing there for a while. They asked if we'd ever noticed anyone following us, or any strange cars parked nearby. We hadn't. That same week, Nate and I ended the lease early and moved out. We lost our security deposit, but we didn't care. A few months later, I ran into Mrs. Thompson, our old next-door neighbor, at the grocery store. She asked if we'd ever figured out who that man was. I told her no, and she frowned. Then she said, "He came back a few times after you left. I saw him standing by the fence, looking at the house. When I called out to him, He just turned and walked away. She said the new tenants, a couple with a small child, had put up more cameras. But the weird thing? She said they'd caught someone on camera one night, standing in the yard facing the window, and the timestamp on the video, 1:31 a.m. At the same time I'd first seen him. Even now, sometimes when I can't sleep, I catch myself glancing out my window just to make sure no one's there. And every time I do, I swear I can feel that same heavy, watching feeling again, like he's still out there somewhere, waiting for me to turn the lights off.